Tom was a janitor in one of the tallest glass buildings in the city. Every morning, before the sun rose, he picked up his old broom and mop, walked into the lobby, and started his work. The floors always shined because of him, the trash cans were always empty, and the hallways smelled clean. People passed him every day, but most never really looked at him. Some nodded politely, some ignored him, and some even acted like he did not exist. But Tom never complained. He had grown used to this quiet life. Yet, there was one thing that made him different from many others who worked in that big building. Tom carried a heart full of love for his little daughter, Emma. She was just 8 years old, with bright eyes and a smile that could light up any dark day. Every night, after finishing his shift, Tom would rush home to her. They would eat dinner together, usually something simple like pasta or soup, and then he would help her with homework. Even though Tom had little money, he tried his best to give Emma everything she needed, and most importantly, he gave her love. Emma adored her father. She knew he worked hard, and even though she was small, she noticed how tired he looked some nights. She would hug him tightly and whisper, "You're the best, Dad." Those words were like fuel for Tom. They reminded him why he worked long hours and why he never gave up. He wanted Emma to have a life better than his own, filled with hope and chances to shine. One afternoon, while Tom was mopping the hallway near the offices, he overheard two employees talking about the company's annual gala. It was a huge event where executives, managers, and many important guests gathered. They dressed in beautiful gowns and expensive suits, ate fine food, and listened to music under shining chandeliers. Tom paused for a moment, his mop resting against the wall, and thought about it. He had never been invited to such an event before, and honestly, he never imagined himself attending. Later that day, as he emptied the trash bins in one of the offices, he found a shiny white envelope on the desk. It was labeled "Invitation to Annual Gala." He blinked at it for a moment, unsure if it had been left for him by mistake. When he checked, he realized that the invitations were for all staff members, not just the executives. He felt a strange mix of surprise and nervousness. Could he really go to such a grand event? Would someone like him even belong there? At first, he thought of throwing the envelope away. But that evening, when he got home, Emma noticed it sticking out of his pocket. "What's that, Dad?" she asked curiously, her eyes shining. Tom tried to brush it off, but Emma was too excited. He finally showed it to her. As soon as she read the words "Annual Gala," her face lit up. "A party? With dresses and music? Can we go?" she asked eagerly. Tom looked at her. He had wanted to protect her from disappointment, but in that moment, he realized something. Maybe this could be a special memory for her. Maybe for just one night, she could feel like a princess. He smiled gently and nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. We'll go together." The next few days were full of quiet preparation. Tom did not have much money, but he managed to take out his old suit from the closet. It was a little worn but still neat. He had saved it from his younger days, hoping it might be useful one day. For Emma, he worked extra hours and used the extra pay to buy her a simple yet lovely blue dress with a ribbon at the waist. When he showed it to her, Emma squealed with joy and hugged him tightly. "I'll look like Cinderella," she giggled. The night of the gala finally came. The city lights sparkled as Tom and Emma walked hand in hand toward the grand hall. The building glowed with golden lights, and fancy cars lined the entrance. Men in tuxedos and women in shining gowns stepped out of their vehicles with confident smiles. Tom and Emma walked quietly among them, their steps small but steady. When they entered the hall, Emma's eyes widened in wonder. The chandeliers sparkled like stars, the tables were covered with silverware, and the air was filled with music. Tom watched her face glow with happiness and thought, this moment is worth everything. But as they moved through the crowd, whispers began. People noticed Tom in his old suit and Emma in her simple dress. Some smiled politely, but others smirked. A group near the door laughed quietly, one of them saying, "Is that the janitor? Did he really bring his daughter here?" The words floated across the room like sharp arrows. Tom heard them, and so did Emma. She squeezed his hand a little tighter and whispered, "Dad, are we supposed to be here?" Her voice trembled with worry. Tom knelt slightly, looked into her eyes, and smiled. "Of course, we belong here. Don't listen to them. Tonight is ours." Emma nodded slowly, trusting him, though her small face still showed a hint of fear. Together, they walked further into the hall, ready to face whatever the night would bring. The music filled the grand hall, soft violins playing as waiters carried trays of sparkling drinks. The crowd laughed, clinked glasses, and spoke about business, travels, and success. To Emma, it all looked like a magical place. Her eyes followed the chandeliers, the glowing candles, and the women in flowing gowns. She whispered to her father, "It's like a fairy tale." Tom smiled at her words, though his heart carried weight. He could feel the eyes on him. He knew he did not fit in with the polished suits and the proud voices. He was only a janitor in this building, someone who usually blended into the background. But tonight, he stood among them, holding his daughter's hand, and he wanted her to remember joy, not shame. They walked to their seats near the back of the hall. Tom guided Emma carefully, trying to ignore the stares. He pulled out a chair for her, and she sat with grace far beyond her years. She looked around, her face glowing in the golden light, but soon her smile faded when she caught sight of a small group nearby. A pair of young managers stood together, whispering and pointing. One leaned closer to the other and said, "He should have stayed home. Look at that suit, it's probably older than the company." They both chuckled. Another added, "And bringing a child? This isn't a playground." Emma heard it clearly. She lowered her eyes and fidgeted with the ribbon on her dress. "Dad," she said softly, "why are they laughing at us?" Tom felt a sharp pain inside his chest. He wanted to protect her from cruelty, but he also wanted to be honest. He leaned close, brushed her hair gently behind her ear, and said, "They laugh because they don't understand. But their laughter doesn't decide who we are. You and I, we belong wherever we choose to stand." Emma looked at him with wide eyes, searching for strength. When she saw his steady smile, she nodded slowly. "Okay, Dad," she whispered. Still, her little hand gripped his tightly, as though afraid of letting go. The evening carried on. Elegant dishes were served: roasted meat, steamed vegetables, and golden bread. Waiters moved swiftly between tables. Emma stared at the plates, surprised by how carefully the food was arranged. "It looks too pretty to eat," she whispered with a giggle, trying to cheer herself. Tom chuckled softly, glad to see a spark of joy return to her face. While others raised glasses of wine and toasted success, Tom simply lifted his water glass and clinked it gently with Emma's juice. "To us," he said quietly. She smiled and repeated, "To us." For that small moment, they both forgot the stares. But the calm did not last long. Near the front of the hall, a group of men in sharp black suits noticed Tom and began whispering. One of them, with a mocking grin, said loudly enough for others to hear, "Careful, he might start sweeping if he sees a mess." The group laughed, drawing the attention of nearby guests. Emma froze. Her face turned red, and her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. She looked at her father again, silently asking why people were so unkind. Tom's jaw tightened, but he kept his calm. He bent toward her and whispered, "Sweetheart, you are the brightest star in this room. Don't let their words make you forget that." Emma took a deep breath, her small shoulders straightening. She tried to smile again, but it was fragile. Tom wished he could shield her from every cruel word, but all he could do was stay strong by her side. Later, as music played and couples began to dance on the wide floor, Emma's eyes sparkled again. She whispered shyly, "Dad, do you think we could dance too?" Tom hesitated. The thought of stepping onto that floor, with everyone watching, filled him with doubt. But then he saw the hope in Emma's eyes. This was her night as much as his. Slowly, he stood, offered his hand, and said with a smile, "Of course. One dance for my princess." They stepped onto the dance floor. At first, people stared, some with curiosity, others with quiet amusement. Tom held Emma's small hand, guided her gently, and together they moved slowly to the rhythm. Emma's laughter, pure and innocent, filled the air. She spun clumsily in her blue dress, her ribbon flying behind her. For that moment, Tom forgot the whispers. He forgot the cruel smiles. All he saw was his daughter's joy, the happiness he had promised her when he agreed to come. And Emma, feeling safe in her father's arms, forgot the laughter too. She only felt the magic of the night. When the song ended, some guests clapped politely, though others still smirked. Tom bowed to Emma playfully, and she giggled, bowing back. They walked off the floor hand in hand, stronger than before. Still, the evening was far from over. The host soon announced that a very important guest was on the way. The CEO of the company, Michael, a man everyone admired, was about to arrive. The room buzzed with excitement. People straightened their ties and fixed their dresses, eager to greet him. Tom and Emma sat quietly at their table, unaware that this arrival would soon change the night and their lives forever. The grand hall grew quiet when the tall double doors opened. A hush spread across the crowd as the CEO, Michael, stepped in. He was a man respected by many, known not only for his leadership but also for his calm and kind presence. People hurried toward him, eager to shake his hand and be seen by him. The hall filled with the sound of greetings and voices calling his name. Emma sat close to her father, watching the scene with wide eyes. She had never seen so many people surround one person. "Dad," she whispered, "is that the most important man here?" Tom nodded slowly, his heart heavy. He had always worked in the background, and though he had seen Michael pass through the building, he had never spoken to him. To Tom, the CEO was part of a world far away from his own. He doubted Michael would ever notice him, much less Emma. Still, he smiled at his daughter. "Yes, sweetheart. That's him." Around the hall, guests tried to outshine one another in front of Michael. They praised his leadership, spoke about new projects, and laughed loudly at small jokes. Michael listened politely, but his eyes wandered across the room. He seemed to search for something or someone. As Tom helped Emma adjust the ribbon on her dress, he noticed Michael's gaze shift. For a brief second, it landed on them, the janitor and his daughter sitting quietly at the back. Tom felt a shiver of nerves. Surely, Michael would turn away, focus on the important people. But to Tom's surprise, the CEO began walking toward them. The crowd parted slowly, shocked at his direction. Voices dropped, and eyes followed his steps. Tom's breath caught in his chest. Emma held his hand tighter, her small face puzzled. "Dad, is he coming to us?" she asked softly. "Yes. I think he is," Tom whispered, almost in disbelief. When Michael reached their table, he smiled warmly. He extended his hand toward Tom, as though greeting an equal. "Good to see you here tonight," he said in a steady voice. Tom rose quickly, unsure how to respond. His hand trembled as he shook the CEO's. "Sir. I thank you. I didn't think," his words faltered, and he lowered his eyes. Michael placed a hand on his shoulder and said gently, "You are part of this company, just as much as anyone in this room." The silence in the hall was thick. People watched in shock. A few who had laughed earlier shifted uncomfortably in their seats. No one had expected the CEO to walk past the polished suits and bright gowns to sit beside the janitor and his daughter. Yet Michael pulled out a chair and settled next to them as though it was the most natural choice. Emma looked at him with nervous curiosity. Michael turned toward her, his eyes kind. "And who is this lovely young lady?" he asked. Emma blushed, hiding partly behind her father's arm. Tom placed his hand on her back and said softly, "This is my daughter, Emma." Michael leaned forward with a smile. "Emma, you look wonderful tonight. That dress suits you perfectly." Her cheeks turned pink, but she managed a shy smile. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Tom's heart swelled with emotion. For the first time that evening, Emma was smiling with pride instead of fear. And for the first time, Tom felt seen not as a janitor, not as a shadow in the building, but as a father who mattered. The guests continued to watch in stunned silence. Some tried to approach, but Michael waved them off politely. He gave his full attention to Tom and Emma, asking about their evening, the food, and the music. He spoke to them as equals, and his warmth filled the space around them. Emma, growing more comfortable, told him how much she liked the chandeliers and how she had danced with her dad. Michael listened with genuine interest, nodding thoughtfully. "That sounds like a memory you'll keep forever," he said. Emma nodded eagerly, her eyes shining again. For Tom, every second felt like a dream. The laughter from earlier seemed to fade into nothing. The cruel whispers no longer mattered. Here was the most powerful man in the room, sitting beside him, showing respect not only to him but also to the little girl who meant everything to him. When Michael finally stood to give his speech, he placed a hand on Tom's shoulder again and said softly, "Stay proud, Tom. You belong here." Tom's eyes stung, though he blinked quickly to hold back tears. He nodded, unable to find the right words. Emma looked at him with a wide smile, whispering, "See, Dad. We do belong." As Michael walked to the stage, the crowd clapped loudly, though their faces showed a mixture of awe and discomfort. Many of them realized how wrong they had been to laugh, how small their judgments looked in the light of true respect. Tom sat taller now, his hand still holding Emma's. She leaned against him with happiness, her earlier worries gone. The night had changed, and though challenges still lay ahead, Tom knew one thing: his daughter would remember this moment for the rest of her life. And for him, that was worth more than any golden chandelier in the hall. Michael stood at the center of the stage, his tall figure commanding the room with ease. The chandeliers above glowed brighter, as though even the lights respected his presence. The crowd grew quiet, waiting for his words. For many, this speech was the highlight of the gala, a moment to hear the leader's vision for the future. But for Tom and Emma, sitting at their table near the back, it was something more. It was a reminder of the strange turn the evening had taken. Only an hour ago, they had been whispered about, laughed at, made to feel small. Now, the most important man in the company had walked past everyone else and chosen to sit with them. Tom could hardly believe it had happened. He sat upright, Emma's small hand still resting in his heart full but heavy with emotions he could not name. Michael began to speak. His voice was deep yet calm, carrying across the hall without effort. "Tonight," he said, "we gather to celebrate success. We celebrate growth, hard work, and vision. But let us not forget something important. None of this means anything without people. Real people." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. "Not just leaders, not just those who make decisions in offices, but everyone. Every role has meaning. Every person matters." Some of the guests nodded politely, but many shifted uneasily in their seats. They knew exactly what he was talking about. Tom lowered his gaze, unsure if Michael meant to point toward him. Emma, however, beamed proudly. She whispered to her father, "He's talking about you." Michael continued, "A company is not only built by those who stand in the spotlight. It is also carried by those who work quietly, often unseen, yet never unimportant. Tonight, let us remember to value every hand that makes our success possible." When the applause rose, it was polite but thin. Some clapped with true feeling, but others simply followed, their smiles stiff. Yet for Tom, those words felt like a shield. For Emma, they felt like a song of justice. After the speech, music played again, and waiters brought more food to the tables. The atmosphere grew lively once more, though it was different now. People kept glancing toward Tom and Emma, whispering not with mockery this time but with curiosity. Some looked guilty, remembering their earlier laughter. Others seemed annoyed, as though they could not understand why the CEO had chosen the janitor's table over theirs. Emma noticed the change. "Dad," she whispered, "they're looking at us again." Tom squeezed her hand gently. "Let them look, sweetheart. We're not hiding." His voice was steady, though inside his heart pounded. Soon, a woman in a silver gown approached their table. She smiled politely at Emma. "What a lovely dress you're wearing," she said softly, though her eyes avoided Tom. Emma smiled shyly and whispered a thank you. Another guest soon followed, a man offering Tom a quick handshake, his face stiff with forced kindness. Tom accepted each gesture with calm respect, though he could feel the weight of their change in attitude. For Emma, it was confusing. "Why are they nice now?" she asked. Tom sighed gently. "Because sometimes people only respect you after someone else shows them how." Emma thought about his words, her little brow furrowed. "But you always deserved respect," she said firmly. Tom smiled at her honesty. "Yes," he whispered, "but not everyone sees with clear eyes." As the night went on, Michael returned to their table. He spoke with Tom about his years of work, asking questions that no one else had ever cared to ask. Tom shared little pieces of his life, how he had worked different jobs to support his daughter, how he had never missed a day of work in the building, how he took pride in leaving each floor shining. Michael listened carefully, nodding with respect. At one point, Emma asked the CEO, "Do you ever get nervous speaking in front of so many people?" Michael chuckled warmly. "Every time," he admitted, "but I remind myself that I am speaking to people, not just faces." That makes it easier. Emma grinned, impressed that even someone so important could feel nervous. You sound brave, she said. Michael looked at her kindly. Bravery is not about never feeling fear. It's about doing the right thing even when you are afraid. Tom's heart tightened at those words. They reminded him of every moment he had swallowed his pride, every moment he had stayed silent when others laughed. Tonight, for the first time, he felt seen not as weak but as strong. As the evening drew closer to its end, the host invited everyone for a final dance. Couples filled the floor, the soft music wrapping around them. Emma tugged on her father's sleeve. Can we dance again, Dad? Tom hesitated, then smiled. Yes, we can. They walked hand in hand to the floor, just as they had before. This time, however, the stairs felt different. People still watched, but there was no laughter. Some even clapped softly as Emma spun in her dress and giggled in her father's arms. Michael stood at the side of the floor, watching them with a smile, his hands folded. He nodded once toward Tom, a gesture of respect. Tom met his gaze and nodded back, gratitude shining in his tired but proud eyes. Emma's laughter filled the hall, louder than the music, stronger than the whispers. Tom held her close, and for the first time all night, he felt light. No matter what anyone thought, he knew he had given his daughter something priceless, a memory where love triumphed over pride, and respect rose above mockery. The gala hall shimmered with soft golden light as the evening moved into its final hours. Guests sipped drinks, whispered among themselves, and admired the polished chandeliers above. Tom and Emma sat quietly at their table after their second dance, their hands still intertwined. For the first time, Tom felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The night, which had begun with stares and whispers, now felt lighter, almost magical. Yet, not everyone was pleased. Some of the executives who had once laughed at him were now restless. They exchanged awkward glances, muttering quietly about how the CEO had chosen to spend time with the janitor and his daughter. Their laughter had vanished, replaced with unease. Tom noticed it but refused to let it affect him. He had already won the most important acknowledgement, Michael's respect. Emma leaned against him and whispered, "Dad, why do people care so much about what others wear or who they bring?" Tom smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Some people forget that kindness is more important than clothes or status," he said. "But tonight, we know what really matters. That is what counts." The music shifted to a slower, softer melody. Michael, still observing from a distance, approached their table once again. "Would you both like to join me for a moment?" he asked, his voice warm and inviting. Tom's heart raced. "Of course, sir," he replied. Emma nodded eagerly, clutching his hand tightly. Together, they followed Michael to a small area near the stage, where he gestured for them to stand. The crowd watched with curiosity as Michael spoke to them openly, ignoring the murmurs of the executives. "You two," he said, looking at Tom and Emma, "represent something very important. You remind all of us that every effort matters, that every person in this company is valuable. Not because of their title, but because of who they are." Tom swallowed, feeling his throat tighten. He wanted to speak, to thank Michael, but words escaped him. Instead, he looked down at Emma, whose eyes were wide with pride and admiration. She whispered softly, "Dad, he's saying what you've always deserved to hear." Michael smiled at her. "And this young lady," he continued, "shows that even in the smallest hands, there can be the greatest impact." She carries hope and courage that inspires those around her. Emma blushed and tried to hide behind her father. Tom chuckled softly and knelt slightly to speak to her. "See, Emma. You are special. Never forget it." The room had grown silent. Whispers from before were gone, replaced by a sense of respect and quiet admiration. Some guests were moved, realizing they had misjudged the janitor and his daughter. Others could only stare, unsure how to respond. Michael then turned to the entire hall. "Let this evening remind us, success is not only built on ambition or power. It is built on honesty, care, and commitment. It is built by those who work quietly, who love deeply, and who never give up on the people they care about. That is the true heart of any company, and of any community." The applause that followed was strong, sincere. Tom felt a warm sense of pride spread through him. He squeezed Emma's hand, and she looked up at him, her eyes sparkling. "Dad," she whispered, "they finally see us." Tom nodded, trying to hold back tears. "Yes, sweetheart. They see what matters now." After the speech, Michael invited Tom and Emma to the stage briefly, where a photographer captured a moment that would be remembered. They smiled shyly, Emma holding her father's hand tightly. Michael stood beside them, placing a hand gently on Tom's shoulder. The cameras flashed, immortalizing not only their image but the story of respect, courage, and love that had unfolded that night. Once the photos were taken, Michael guided them back to their table. "Thank you for reminding all of us about what really matters," he said quietly. Tom nodded, almost unable to speak. Emma whispered, "Dad, did you hear that? He thanked us." "Yes, baby," Tom said softly, his voice full of emotion. "We did something right tonight." For the remainder of the gala, the atmosphere around them changed completely. People who had once laughed now approached with smiles of genuine friendliness. Some apologized quietly, while others offered small gestures of acknowledgement. Tom accepted them all with calm dignity. He did not need validation from anyone but Michael, and the respect of his daughter. When the music began to play again, Emma tugged on his sleeve. "One last dance?" she asked. Tom laughed softly. "One last dance," he agreed. They moved together to the floor, Emma spinning happily in her blue dress. Tom held her close, watching her laugh freely. Around them, the room seemed brighter, lighter, as though the joy between father and daughter had lifted the very air. And in that moment, Tom realized something important. He could not change the opinions of everyone, but he could protect his daughter's happiness. He could teach her that dignity, courage, and love mattered more than mockery or status. Tonight, he had done just that. The gala would end, the chandeliers would dim, and the crowd would leave. But for Tom and Emma, this night was theirs forever, a night of pride, love, and recognition, the memory of which would never fade. The gala was nearing its end, but the glow of the chandeliers and the soft hum of music made it feel as if time had slowed down. Tom and Emma remained at their table, holding hands, both lost in the magical atmosphere. The earlier whispers and laughter that had once stung now felt distant, replaced by the warmth of respect and kindness that Michael had shown. Emma looked up at her father. "Dad," she said quietly, "do you think they understand now? Do they really see us?" Tom smiled gently, brushing a strand of her hair from her face. "Some may still struggle to understand, sweetheart. But tonight, we've shown them that respect and love matter more than anything else. And that's what they'll remember most." The CEO, Michael, had not yet left. Instead, he approached their table once more, his calm presence filling the space. "Tom, Emma," he said warmly, "thank you again for being here tonight. You've reminded all of us of something very important. Hard work, kindness, and courage are qualities we should celebrate every day." Tom's chest swelled with emotion. "Thank you, sir," he said softly, "for noticing, for caring." Michael smiled, placing a reassuring hand on Tom's shoulder. "It's easy to notice someone who inspires by example. You do that every day, Tom. Don't ever forget it." Emma beamed, her small hand rising to wave shyly at him. "Thank you, Mr. Michael," she said. Michael knelt slightly to meet her gaze. "You are a brave and kind young lady, Emma. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." As he walked away, the room seemed to shift again. Those who had once whispered and laughed were now quieter, humbled by what had occurred. Some came forward with smiles and small words of acknowledgement, offering compliments or apologies that were genuine. Tom accepted each one politely, but he did not need them. What mattered most was that his daughter felt proud and safe. The host announced that the gala would conclude with a final toast. Glasses were raised, and the room fell silent once again. Michael stepped to the front, looking around at the gathered guests. "Tonight," he said, his voice firm and warm, "we celebrate more than business achievements. We celebrate the human spirit, the courage, the kindness, and the love that each person brings to this company. It's easy to overlook those who work quietly, but without them, we could achieve nothing. Let us remember that every role matters, every effort counts, and every person deserves respect." Tom squeezed Emma's hand, and she whispered, "Dad, did you hear that? He's saying it again." "Yes, baby," Tom whispered back, and this time, I think they all heard it. The applause that followed was louder, more heartfelt than before. People were not only clapping out of politeness, they were clapping because they had learned a lesson. A lesson about humility, about noticing the people who quietly make a difference, and about recognizing the value of every life, regardless of title or position. Emma's face glowed with pride. She leaned against her father and whispered, "Dad, I think tonight will stay in my heart forever." Tom's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Mine too, sweetheart. Mine too." After the toast, the music returned, softer now, more reflective. Some guests began to leave, but Tom and Emma stayed seated for a few moments, savoring the final moments of the night. The room had changed. The same people who had mocked them hours ago now looked at them with quiet admiration. A young manager approached timidly, offering a small bouquet of flowers to Emma. I wanted to say I'm sorry for laughing before," he said, his voice sincere. Emma took the flowers shyly and smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. Tom nodded silently, grateful for the small gesture. Michael returned briefly, noticing the exchange. He gave Tom a small nod of approval, a silent acknowledgement that the right message had been delivered. Tom smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and relief. Emma tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can we dance one more time before we go?" Tom laughed softly, ruffling her hair. "One more dance, for my princess," he said. Together, they walked to the floor, their steps confident now. Emma twirled and spun, her laughter ringing out like a melody, and Tom held her close, feeling the weight of the night lift completely. As the final song ended, the lights dimmed slightly, and the guests began to depart. Tom and Emma gathered their belongings and walked toward the exit, hearts full and spirits high. The memories of the earlier whispers and laughter felt distant, replaced entirely by the pride and love they shared and by the knowledge that true respect had been earned, not given. Outside, the cool night air welcomed them. Emma's hand was still firmly clasped in Tom's. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Dad, tonight was perfect." Tom smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. "Yes, baby. Tonight was perfect because we had each other. Nothing else matters." And in that quiet city night, the janitor and his daughter walked home together, stronger than ever, knowing that love, courage, and kindness had triumphed over mockery and that they would carry the memory of this night in their hearts forever. The city streets were quiet as Tom and Emma walked home, the night air cool and refreshing after the warmth of the gala. Emma's little hand rested in her father's, and she skipped occasionally, her blue dress swaying with each step. Tom smiled down at her, feeling a deep sense of pride. Tonight had been more than just a gala, it had been a lesson in courage, dignity, and love. Emma looked up at him with shining eyes. "Dad," she whispered, "I can't believe everyone saw us differently tonight. Even the people who laughed, they finally understood." Tom nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "Yes, baby. And the most important thing is that we believed in ourselves. That's what really matters." They passed under a streetlight, and Tom paused for a moment, letting Emma admire the glow. "You know," he said softly, "I wanted tonight to be special for you. I wanted you to feel like you could shine, even if the world sometimes makes people doubt you." Emma hugged him tightly. "I felt like a princess tonight, Dad. Not because of the dress or the lights, but because I was with you." Tom's heart swelled. He had worked hard all these years, facing long hours, exhaustion, and the judgments of others, but moments like this made it all worthwhile. His little girl had felt love, respect, and pride, and that was the greatest gift he could ever give her. The next morning, Tom arrived at work early, as usual. The building was quiet, the hallways still polished from the night before. But something had changed. He noticed small smiles from people he had never really spoken to. Some nodded politely as he passed. Even a few of the managers who had mocked him earlier now looked at him with subtle respect. Emma had stayed home that day, sleeping in after the excitement of the gala, and Tom found himself thinking about her constantly. He wanted her to know that respect and kindness were earned not by titles, clothes, or wealth, but by the way you treat others and the love you give. Later, as he swept the lobby, Michael appeared. The CEO walked toward him without ceremony, smiling warmly. "Tom," he said, "I wanted to thank you again. Last night reminded me, and all of us, of something we often forget, that every person, no matter their role, is essential." Tom paused, unsure what to say. "Thank you, sir," he finally replied. "It means a lot coming from you." Michael nodded. "Keep being the man you are. Keep raising that daughter of yours with love and courage. That is the true measure of success." Tom's eyes glistened. "I'll do my best, sir. Always." That evening, Tom returned home to Emma, who ran to him with arms wide open. "Dad, did you see anyone at work today?" she asked excitedly. "I did, baby," he replied, scooping her up. "And you know what? Things feel different now. People are kinder, and respect is in the air." Emma smiled and leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'm glad we went to the gala together, Dad. I'll never forget it." Tom hugged her tightly. "Neither will I, sweetheart. Neither will I." Days turned into weeks, but the memory of that night remained vivid for both of them. Tom noticed subtle changes at work. People greeted him warmly. Some even asked for his advice on small matters, and he realized they were starting to see him not as a janitor, but as a person who worked with dedication, integrity, and pride. Emma often told her friends about the gala, about how her father had held her hand and shown her that courage and kindness matter most. She spoke of Michael, the CEO, and how he had treated them with respect, showing that power is not measured by wealth or status but by the way you treat others. One weekend, as Tom and Emma sat in the park, she looked up at him with a thoughtful expression. "Dad," she said softly, "I think we can face anything together now. Nothing can make me feel small when I'm with you." Tom smiled, his heart full. "Exactly, baby. Life will have its challenges, but as long as we have each other, we are stronger than anything." That night, Tom tucked Emma into bed. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "Always remember, Emma, you are brave, you are kind, and you are loved. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." "I won't, Dad," she whispered back, closing her eyes with a contented sigh. As Tom left her room, he looked out the window at the city lights below. The world could be harsh, full of judgments and mockery, but it could also be kind, full of moments that mattered. And tonight, he knew that the love between a father and his daughter had been stronger than any of it. Tom sat down for a moment, reflecting on the journey he and Emma had shared, from long hours, quiet sacrifices, and whispered judgments, to laughter, recognition, and pride. The gala had been more than an event, it had been a turning point, a night where the world had been reminded that dignity, courage, and love are never invisible. And in the warm glow of the city lights, Tom made a silent promise to himself and to Emma: he would always protect her joy, always nurture her courage, and always remind her of her worth, no matter what the world said. Together, father and daughter had faced a night of doubt and emerged stronger, their hearts full, their spirits unbroken, and their bond unshakable. And that was the greatest victory of all.